Lansing Porter for almost my entire life, having first discovered, here she is, as a young woman, sitting on the steps of a log cabin she built in Plattsburgh in 1937, but I first got to know songs from her collecting by an album that was sung, where these songs were sung by Pete Seeger, called Champlain Valley Songs. It came out in 1960. And the reason that my family had this album is it came to us through a great friend of my parents, Dr. George Yoakum, who was a music professor at SUNY Plattsburgh. He was a folk musician himself, and he was also a friend of Marjorie Lansing Porter. And so that's how the music came into my world. And I sometimes think about that, at the same time that I was enthralled by the Beatles and Moody Blues and Creedence Clearwater, that there was something about this music that really grabbed me, and so I've been sort of singing them ever since. And some of you have maybe heard me play as part of the Thursday night Whitcomb's Jams, or I also play with a group called the Betts Brothers. Several of you are here today. And also play with you may have heard me play at open mics with Barry Goldstein, who's here somewhere. But I don't in all of these opportunities to play music, I don't get a chance to sing this stuff. And it's a little off the beaten track, but anyway, I'm grateful to the folks at Snowfort for giving me this opportunity to come and sing. Also want to give a shout out to Mac McDevitt, my good friend, who encouraged me to do this. So I'm really delighted to be here. Yeah. So Marjorie Lansing Porter's family has very deep roots in the Adirondack region, having come here in the 1790s, and that in itself is a very long story. And probably best known of her ancestors was a guy named Wendall Lansing, who was an abolitionist. He was the editor of the Essex County Republican, which was then based in Keysville. And so fairly prominent family in journalism in the region. And then she herself learns the newspaper business because her parents were both in the newspaper business. So she's a journalist and author, was the county historian for both Essex and Clinton counties separately. And in the process of all this interest in local history, she starts to seek people out and record traditional music that she was still being sung in the region. And this begins about 1942, this recording work, and extends all the way up until about 1967. And during that time, using a SoundScriber machine, she recorded dozens of people singing songs, playing fiddle tunes and fife tunes, and telling their stories as well. Now, just a little context here. So, as a collector of traditional music, she was a part of a fairly long lineage by this time. She was sort of building on the work of people like Francis James Child, who was a Harvard folklorist and who collected more than 300 English and Scottish songs and ballads that we now often call child ballads, and they have numbers to them. There was a father and son team named John and Alan Lomax who during the 20s and 30s and 40s recorded over 10,000 songs all across the United States for the Library of Congress, and it was they that discovered people like Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie. And closer to home, she was an acquaintance of Helen Harkness Flanders, who collected extensively in Vermont and New Hampshire in the 30s and 40s. And also, she was also an acquaintance of Frank and Ann Warner, who collected traditional music in southern Appalachia. And they, for instance, collected the first known, the first to collect the song Tom Dooley, which is such a sort of big part of the sort of folk world, these days. And Porter wasn't the first person to collect in the Adirondack Lake Champlain region either. She She had others included a woman named Edith Cutting, who was from Lewis, and in her book called Lore of an Adirondack Country, published in 1944, there were 21 Anglo-American ballads, and also a woman named Sarah Cleveland in the Saratoga region was also a singer and a song collector. So, Porter, like all of these other people that I have mentioned, was worried about these traditional songs which were being passed on from generation to generation. They were worried about them disappearing. And so they were, going, for decades and decades and decades, going all around the world in this country, recording them. And part of what was happening was the advent of radio and television and records and the popularization of music, and a lot of this sort of old stuff that we're going to hear mostly today was, kind of falling out of favor. But it was also the way it was being passed along was changing too. So with her SoundScriber machine, she tromps around the North Country, and on 150 audio discs, she makes 456 recordings and 300 songs. And my friend Allison Arnold, who's here today, I didn't realize till just the other day that you are somehow related to Marjorie Lansing Porter, I think, right?
Well,
yep.
Not specifically related. We called her Aunt Margie.
I see.
She was friends with my grandparents,
Yeah.
and so our families were pretty close, and we called her Aunt Margie.
And there's someone else here that's a relative that, yeah, where, right there, okay, yeah. How are you related to Marjorie?
I'm her great-great-granddaughter.
Your great-great-granddaughter, yeah, wonderful. Thank you for coming. Yeah, there's oh, that's another story. Okay, so, most of the songs in this collection fall into a couple of categories in terms of their origins. Some of them come out of Ireland and Scotland and the British Isles and come across the ocean and are much the same as they would have been sung there, sometimes with some variations. Some of them originate in the United States or Canada and find their way into the region, and especially when you look at like logging songs, all across the northern woods of New England, Michigan, Minnesota, southern Canada, everywhere there were logging camps, these songs were sung. And so that's another point of origin. And there were some a couple that I'll sing today that have their origins, right here. They were written by people right in here. And then there are some in the collection, because she's recording in the 1940s and 50s. People are starting to listen to the radio and going to vaudeville shows, and so some of that is creeping into what people are learning and passing along. And it won't surprise you, but there's what people sing about are the same kinds of things that people sing about today: the joy and heartbreak of being in love, the joys and frustrations of work, comments on politics and on war. Some of it's just humorous. It's just sort of the stuff that we still sing about today. And I guess, I think one of the reasons that I love the music for itself, but I also know that a lot of it is still disappearing. As much as all of these people did to bring it, to hold on to it and to document it and so on, it's still, people are not singing this stuff very much. And so I guess I'm trying to keep that tradition alive. So I'm now going to share a kind of sample of things from the collection. Let's see, what do we get started with here? Okay. So one of the people that she found was a guy named Ray Fadden, and if you may know that name is associated with what's now called the Six Nations Iroquois Cultural Center on Toyota. And he was a Mohawk, and and he knew some songs from that tradition. And one of the songs that she collected from him was a song that was used to keep rhythm as they were paddling their canoes. and it goes like this. I have trouble starting this one. Hi-yo, watch-a-nay, oh, hey, oh, hi-yo, watch-a-nay, hi-yo, watch-a-nay, oh, hey, hi-yo, watch-a-nay, hi-yo, watch-a-nay, oh, hey, hi-yo, watch-a-nay.
Yeah.
And I remember, I lived for a while on the coast of Maine, and I can remember learning a song from a folk musician on the Maine coast named Gordon Bach, and it was all about keeping the rhythm of rowing, and it was that same thing, except you were sort of going like this, and those songs were used to keep the rhythm of pounding hammers and rowing, and that's something that you see a lot in traditional music. I'm gonna skip this. Some of these songs I may decide not to sing and just skip over them. I may go back to them, but I want to start with a song that came from the British Isles, and as an example of that tradition. And this is a song called John Riley, and what do I want to say about John Riley? It's been called one of the most widespread and favorite ballads in the Anglo-American tradition. It was sung for Mrs. Porter by a woman named Stella Perry from Redford, which is in the Saranac River Valley. And so here goes. Let me just make sure I got the right. John Riley. Oh, almost everything I'm going to sing this afternoon is done a cappella. I think I'm only going to do one, maybe two songs using the banjo. And that was really common on how she heard them. And think about the times that this was coming out of, to own a musical instrument, a piano or a fiddle, would have been a reach for a lot of people. And so a lot of what we hear is going to hear is a cappella. So. As I strolled out one morning early to view the fields and to take some air, it was there I spied a fair young damsel. She was like a lily fair. I stepped up to her and kindly asked her if she would be a bold sailor's wife. Oh no, kind sir, she quickly answered, I choose to live a sweet single life. What makes you different from other women? What makes you different from other kind? For you are young, sweet, beautiful, and handsome, and for to marry you I might be inclined. Well, it's now, kind sir, that I must tell you, I would have been married 3 years ago to one John Riley who left this country. He's been the cause of my overthrow. He courted me both late and early. He courted me both night and day. And when he had my affections gained, he left me here and he went away. Oh, never mind for this Johnny Riley, and come with me to that distant shore. Why, we'll set sail for Pennsylvania, and bid adieu for Riley to forevermore. Well, I shan't go with you to Pennsylvania, or not go with you to that distant shore. My heart is waiting, I cannot forget him, although I may never see him anymore. Well, when he saw that her love was loyal, he gave her kisses 1, 2, and 3. Saying, I'm the man you once called Johnny Riley. I've been the cause of your misery. I've sailed the ocean, gained great promotion. I've laid my money on the English shore, and now will marry, no longer her tarry, and I shall never deceive you anymore. I think one of the challenges of singing these old songs sometimes is that we look at them through the lens of our place in the 21st century, and we think, what a cad he was, you know. But you know, I guess we just have to just look the other way sometimes. So most of you know that the Champlain Valley was the setting for several big military campaigns during the French and Indian War, during the Revolutionary War, during the War of 1812. And during the War of 1812, at the Battle of Plattsburgh in September of 1814, American naval forces under the command of Thomas McDonough and the land forces under the command of Alexander Macomb decisively beat the British and turned the tide of the war. This next song, which is called The Banks of Champlain, is said to have been composed by Alexander Sandy Macomb's wife, Catherine Macomb, and expresses her great worry about her husband's fate. It wasn't uncommon for soldiers' families to be following them during the campaign to be able to give aid and assistance to them. And so here she is in the Champlain Valley. Her husband is commanding thousands of men, engaged with the British. And, she's not caught up in the drama and the glory of the war. She's worried about her husband. And so this song looks at this event, from the point of view of Sandy Macomb's wife. The other really cool thing about this song is Mrs. Porter collected it from a woman named Lily Delorme. See, I've got a picture of Lily Delorme here. She lived also in the Saranac River Valley, I think on the Hardscrabble Road. And Lily Delorme provided Mrs. Porter with 100 songs. She was a fabulous, sometimes these people are called informants, but she was but here's the really cool thing, is that Lily Delorme's grandfather, Gideon Baker, had fought in the War of 1812. And so it's likely that this was a song that he would have known from either being there or, I don't know if he actually fought at the Battle of Plattsburgh, but the lineage of this song comes right out of her, heritage. And so this is called The Banks of Champlain. Good time to have an ear pop here. All right. 'Twas autumn, and round me the leaves were descending, and naught but the drumming bird tapped on the tree, while thousands their freedom and rights were defending. Oh, the din of their arms sounded dismal to me. For Sandy, my love, was engaged in the action. His death would have ended my life in distraction. Without him I value this world not a fraction, as mournful I strayed on the banks of Champlain. New York, the Green Mountains, Macomb and McDonough, the farmer, the sailor, the soldier, the gunner, each party united to fend up their honor, to conquer or die on the banks of Champlain. Then turning to list to the cannon's loud thunder, my elbow I leaned on a rock near the shore. The sound nearly parted my heartstrings asunder. I thought I would see my dear Sandy, no more. Oh, the cannon ceased firing, the drums were still beating. The foes of our country far north were retreating. The neighboring damsels each other were greeting with songs of delight on the banks of Champlain. Thank you. I would say the most common theme in this whole collection is work. And because so much of the lumbering industry was such an important part of the regional economy and so widespread in the region, there are many songs about working in the woods. And I sort of picked two of them out to sing. I think I'll only sing one of them for now, depending on what the clock looks like. As I add, maybe I'll sing the second one in the end. But one of the things, and this song and both of the songs that I could have sung are really speak to the drudgery of working in the woods. You know, these were groups of men working in very primitive, very cold conditions in the winter with a lot of danger, and death was always close by, and it was very lonely. But there's also in both of them, a real thread of pride. Like, this may be shit work, but we love it, you know? And that's one of the things I love about these songs. This came from another very important person to Mrs. Porter. This came from Yankee John Galusha, who's pictured here. He lived in Minerva, and he worked in lumber camps. He was also a guide. He worked as a forest ranger for a while, and so he was a very important person. And what else I want to say about him? Also a farmer. Yeah. Okay, got to make sure I've got the whole thing here. All right. This is called The Shantyman's Life. Oh, the shantyman leads a wearisome life, though some think it's free from care. It's a wielding of an axe from the morning until night, in the middle of the forest so drear. Lying in the shanty, it's a bleak and cold, where the stormy winds they do blow. And as soon as the morning daylight appears, to the wild woods we must go. Transported I am, oh, from the haunts of man, down by the Hudson stream, where the wolves and the owls and the panther's ugly growls disturb our nightly dreams. At 4 o'clock our noisy old cook shouts out, it's the breaking of day, and ere the morning sun appears, in broken slumbers we do pass away our nights away. When spring it comes in, double hardships then begin, for the water's so piercing cold. Dripping wet were our clothes, and our limbs were almost froze, and our pike poles we scarce can hold. Over rock shores and dams give employment to our hands, for our well-banded rafts we do steer, and the rapids we do run, for to us 'tis only fun. We avoid all slavish fears. Well, the shantyman is the man that I love best, and I never will deny him the same. My heart doth scorn all you city foppish boys, who think it a disgraceful game. You can boast about your farms, but give the shanty boys charms, for he fairly surpasses them all. Until death do us part, we'll enjoy each other's hearts. May our riches be great or small. Thank you. I just love how that song takes you to this time and place and drops you there. It's really lovely. So I'm going to skip Let's Lamar Lumber and Go. Maybe I'll sing it later. So we're going to get the banjo out here. And I don't think, in her collecting, I don't think there's a single song of anyone playing it on the banjo. Sometimes it was guitar, there were fiddlers. But because it was a Pete Seeger record that I learned a lot of this from, he brought the banjo to it. So this next song is called Clara Nolan's Ball, and it was. I'm stuck before I say that. Talk about the song. So again, the era that we're talking about, the 19th century and the early 20th century. This is all pre-radio and television, and people were living in fairly small, isolated communities up here. How did people have fun? You had to sort of make your own fun, right? And so one of the things that pops up in several places in these songs is songs about going to a dance, and making your own fun, whether it was at a barn or someone's house or at the Grange Hall. People would get together and dance on there. And so this is probably the most joyous song in the whole collection. They're not all dour like the Shantyman's life, so this was called Clara Nolan's Ball. It was collected from a man named Peter Perrow from Redford. There seems to be quite a few people in the Saranac River Valley that were singing for her, and he was described as a swashbuckling French-Canadian lumberjack singer, and which reminds me to say that there were quite a few songs in this collection that were in French, and I just don't. My French is. I just didn't want to risk it here, so I'm not going to sing them. But there are quite a few, and there's also, as I said before, there were also some that were just fiddle tunes and just fife tunes as well. All right. Let's see. Oh, we're all invited and the band's engaged and we're going to have some fun. Miss Clara Nolan gives a ball the day she's 21. We borrow knives and tablecloths from all around the town, and every man must bring a chair. He wants to sit down. Oh, will you come? Oh, will you come? Oh, you never will forget it if you come, for the bells are ringing and the girls are singing, fiddle and a fife to go. Tra-la-la-la-la, it's pleasing, it's pleasing, it's squeezing free for all. There's Carton in the corner at Miss Clara Nolan's Ball. Oh, the clock strikes 10 and then dance begins, and we keep it up till day. There will be no collection for expenses to defray. We've golden rye and lager here in Philadelphia ale, and if the keg is empty, oh, go and fill the pail. Oh, will you come? Oh, will you come? Oh, you never will forget it if you come, for the bells are ringing and the girls are singing, a fiddle and a fife to go. It's teasing, it's pleasing, it's squeezing free for all. There's Carton in the corner at Miss Clara Nolan's Ball. There he comes in with his Irish pipe, fiddling, fiddling too. He plays a simple Irish waltz, likewise a peekaboo. But it's not a proper Northman's house without pegs behind the door. But as there's no place to hang your hat, just hang it on the floor. Oh, will you come? Oh, will you come? Oh, you never will forget it if you come, for the bells are ringing and the girls are singing, a fiddle and a fife to go. It's teasing, it's pleasing, it's squeezing free for all. There's Carton in the corner at Miss Clara Nolan's Ball. so not not all outings to the dance in town were joyous like that. And the other song I want to sing in this theme of having fun, we're trying to have fun in this case, is a song called Young Charlotte, or sometimes it's called Fair Charlotte. And this song tells the story of a young woman freezing to death on her way to a dance in town. It's based on an actual event that took place on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1839, somewhere in New England. And a few years later, a man named Seba Smith wrote a poem about the tragedy in 1843 called A Corpse Going to a Ball. And then the song, and then a man named William Lorenzo Carter took the poem and turned it into a song, more or less the song that I'm going to sing today. And so, I don't know how many of you, if you read historical newspapers, it's amazing how many little news items there are about tragedies that happened in daily life. We were really kind of caught, I mean, we still are, I think. So anyway, it's just interesting to me how this event has woven its way through poetry and through song. And, but there's even more to it than that, is that there was these little, I found some of these online. They even started to manufacture little white porcelain dolls called frozen Charlotte dolls. You believe that? So again, another way to sort of capitalize on the tragedy. And some of them are very corpse-like, and some of them are smiling, and so I guess it's sort of before and after, I guess. But frozen Charlotte dolls. But it's funny, when I was looking for some more information about frozen Charlotte dolls, I came across an article called The True Story of Frozen Charlotte Dolls that actually completely disputed that these had anything to do with this event and the poem and the song. And what this person claims, which is that these were manufactured for about 50 years before they started being called frozen Charlotte dolls. So maybe it was just an additional branding, layer to it. And so anyway, now I don't know what I guess I got to believe that. So so sorry I sort of deflated that whole story a little bit. What else do I want to say about this? This was collected by a man named Amos Blood, who was a stonemason in Ticonderoga. All right, here goes, Young Charlotte. Fair Charlotte dwelt on the mountainside, in a wild and lonely spot. No dwelling there for 3 miles around, except her father's cot. And there on many a winter's night, young swains would gather there, for her father kept a social board, and she was very fair. It was New Year's Eve as the sun went down, out looked her wistful eye, out from the frosty window pane to see the sleighs pass by. In the village 15 miles away, 'twas to be a ball that night. And though the air was piercing cold, her heart was warm and light. How lightly he beamed her laughing eyes, as a well-known voice she heard. And dashing to the cottage door, her lover's sleigh appeared. "Oh, daughter dear," her mother cried, "this blanket round you fold, for 'tis a dreadful night abroad, you'll catch your death of cold." Oh nay, young Charlotte cried, she laughed like a gypsy queen. To ride in blankets muffled up I never would be seen. My silken cloak is quite enough, you know 'tis lined throughout, and there's my silken scarf to twine my head and neck about. Her bonnet and her gloves were on, she jumped into the sleigh, and swiftly they sped o'er the mountainside and o'er the hills away. With muffled beat, so silently, 5 miles at length were passed, when Charles, with few and shivering words, the silence broke at last. Oh, such a dreadful night! I never saw, my reins I scarce can hold. Young Charlotte faintly then replied, I am exceeding cold. He cracked his whip, he urged his steed much faster than before, and thus 5 other dreary miles in silence were passed o'er. Spoke Charles, oh how fast the freezing ice is gathering on my brow, and Charlotte still more faintly said, I'm growing warmer now. Thus they rode on through the frosty air and the glittering cold starlight, until at last the village lamps and ballroom came in sight. They reached the town and Charles sprang out and held his hand to her. Why sit you like a monument that hath no power to stir? He called her once, he called her twice, she answered not a word. He asked her for her hand again, but still she never stirred. He took his hand in his, 'twas cold and hard as any stone. He tore the mantle from her face, and the cold stars o'er it shone. Then quickly to the lighted hall her lifeless form he bore. Young Charlotte's eyes were closed for aye, she was still forevermore. He knelt himself down by her side, and bitter tears did flow. He said, my young intended bride I never more shall know. He flung his arms around her neck, he kissed her marble brow. His thoughts went back to the place she said, I'm growing warmer now. All right. I'm going to sing. I will say a few closing words, and maybe I'll sing one more. So, even with all this work that Mrs. Porter did to collect this music, and it was the collection, along with lots of her other materials, was donated to the Special Collections Department at SUNY Plattsburgh. But for decades and decades, almost 50 years, it sat there kind of untouched, transcribed, re-recorded, really untouched. And I remember someone saying to me once, it's the last great sort of traditional folk music collection that really hasn't been processed, you know. And I just thought that was a shame. But anyway, and then eventually, in 2013, through a collaboration between SUNY Plattsburgh, Mountain Lake PBS, and an organization called Traditional Arts in Upstate New York, some money was raised to really bring this collection to light. And it was transcribed. It was, you know, when you do the notation for the music. An award-winning documentary was made by Mountain Lake PBS. A book was written. I have the book here. This book was written, which has, you know, a number of the tunes and their stories in it. And what am I missing? You can actually go. You can hear a lot of the music online. And there was a traveling exhibition, and there was a series of concerts around the region too, with various people playing, and some of it being done in schools with school children. So this was finally great news. Like, you know, her time had really finally come. And maybe another bit of it that's about to happen this year is Mrs. Porter had a mentee named Lee Knight, and he has had a lifelong interest in her and the music that she collected. He's a folk musician and a kind of amateur folklorist. He lives in North Carolina, and after decades of sort of saying, I'm going to write a book someday, a book is finally coming out this summer, which is called Adirondack Traditional Music, the Marjorie Lansing Collection of Folk Songs and Ballads. And so I think it's due out in August of this year, and so that'll be a great thing. I think before I do a final song, just one other sort of reflection. You know, I began this program talking about my history with this music and my love for the music, and I hope you've felt that in what I've shared with you. But someone said to me recently that history is really makes me emotional to say this, that history is a kind of devotion, and it's a devotion to memory and to remembering and to bearing witness and to honoring ancestors and their work and their struggles and their lives and their joys. And I think this music and things that put us in touch with the history are also part of bringing that arc, you know, that so many people, that brings that arc all the way forward right into the here and now. And so that's part of why this is so beautiful for me. So I think I'll just close with one, let's see, what do I want to sing? God. Maybe I'll do this short one. This is there's also throughout this music a great love of place. And this is one of those examples. This is called Lily of the Lake, and this also came from Yankee John Galusha in Minerva. It's funny, I've gone and heard him singing it, and these recordings are so scratchy, the sound quality is really terrible. And sometimes these people that were singing these songs they didn't necessarily have great music. They weren't great vocalists, but they knew the music, and it was enough, and that was enough. Anyway, so this is called Lily of the Lake. Oh, there's a gallant landscape, if ever you did see. It lies between old Canada and the Atlantic Sea. It's decked all over with flowers and covered with bending greens. It is the pleasantest place to me that lies on Lake Champlain. And on this lake's fair bosom, sweet Mary swiftly glides, above its sparkling waters where playful fishes hide. The birds were singing in the air their most delightful glee. It seemed to me a madrigal directed unto me. Oh, I sat down by Mary's side and I told her my desire. I clasped her to my bosom, I asked her to be mine. She answered me with a blinding roar that she would be my mate. She is the lovely Mary, the lily of the lake. I'd be glad to take